What do you take me for? A cunt?
In the late 1960s, in the East End of London, a young thug, never named in the film aside from being labelled as Gangster 55, is recruited by crime boss Freddie Mays. 55 is efficient muscle, beating and intimidating those who need a tuning up, but it becomes apparent that the young man has his ambitious eyes set on a higher goal, that of betraying his boss and taking the big seat from Freddie Mays. Welcome to another gangster movie review. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to stay up to date with videos, and check out my other crime movie reviews on my gangster film playlist, which includes well-known crime films like Gangs of New York, American Gangster and Reservoir Dogs, but also lesser-known mob films like This Thing of Ours, Sexy Beast and Meet the Mobsters. Today we're looking at one such obscure film which has something of a minor cult reputation among British crime movie fans. Gangster No. 1. Not exactly the most thrilling name for a film. Personally, I think it comes off as a little cheesy, but I guess it makes sense within the context of the film's story. The protagonist wanting to be Gangster No. 1. Released in 2000, directed by Paul McGuane and starring Paul Bettany, Malcolm McDowell, David Thewlis and Saffron Burrows, the story follows the rise and ruthless ambition of a nameless gangster, played by Bettany as a young man and McDowell as the older version. He begins as a low-level thug in 1960s London, working under the suave and respected gangster Freddie Mays, played by Thewlis. Obsessed with power, violence and status, the young gangster schemes to take over Mays, ultimately betraying him and seizing control of the criminal empire. The movie then jumps forward in time, showing the older gangster reflecting on his life, haunted by paranoia, emptiness, and the spectre of Freddie Mays, who is released from prison after decades behind bars, having of course been initially set up by Gangster 55. Gangster No. 1 is a solid crime film that is really effective at what it sets out to do, but is also hampered by its biggest selling point, Malcolm McDowell.
Maybe I'd like to settle down sometime, eh? But nobody ever thinks about that, do they? I mean, nobody ever thinks about me!
Who most will know as the titular character in Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. A summarization of the film would be that it's a good movie, anchored by a chilling, unnerving performance from a terrific Paul Bettany.
Look at me. Look at my eyes.
I'm telling you the truth.
Andy. Look at my fucking eyes.
With an excellent look and feel of a 1960s and 1970s London, and simultaneously is almost completely derailed by a terrible McDowell.
Do me a favour.
Honestly, if you just remove McDowell's scenes, who shows up in the beginning in a pointless party scene, and that bit I just showed you with the awkward meta joke. Awkward because it's a huge tonal departure from the rest of the film. But if you took that intro out and removed the last 20 minutes or so where McDowell is back in the film, essentially getting rid of all the modern day scenes, make it slightly longer and give it an actual ending, and of course get rid of McDowell's narration, and I think we'd be seeing quite a terrific little film here. Unfortunately, there's a lopsided feel to the movie, and to explain why McDowell doesn't work, you have to showcase what the film does right.
Oh, yeah. You told me a lot of things.
You're not a bad-looking bloke. Why don't you find yourself a nice girl?
It doesn't feel like a movie released in 2000. It actually has the feel of a movie made in the 70s or 80s, which of course is a compliment, as the vast majority of the picture is set in the past. The recreation of the time period is excellent, and the cast is solid. David Thewlis was great, a man who often excels at playing off-kilter menacing kind of roles, and who most I guess will recognise as Professor Lupin from the Harry Potter films, or as V.M. Varga from Fargo Season 3. And incidentally, I actually did an entire analysis on Varga's teeth, if you're interested. But Thewlis has that menace here, but he's equally as slick and charming as he is scary. The rest of the cast do a fine job, though I do have question marks about Jamie Foreman as Thewlis' East End rival. Some actors just don't do it for you, and I've seen this guy in a few things, but he always felt to me to be a little over the top in things I've seen him in, and it's no different here.
You wanna go war with me, Freddie? Why don't you just sit down?
Sit down? Sit down? You fucking coming in my club and telling me to sit down? You fucking long streak of fucking piss!
Why?
I mean, I don't know what the hell this is supposed to be.
Sounds about right, doesn't it? Yeah. Sounds about right, doesn't it?
What the fuck was that? It gets weirder every time you watch it. The didgeridoo, the haka, the film speeding up, Thewlis looking like, what is happening? And then the camera closing in on his face as he engulfs the frame. It's just so bizarre. And one of the few weird moments in the film that sticks out, like that piss joke in the beginning. Although to be fair, Foreman is actually the son of infamous UK criminal Freddie Foreman, still alive at the time of the making of this video at 90 plus, who ran with the Cray twins and whose life was the loose basis for the crime film The Long Good Friday, for whatever that's worth. The star of the show is Paul Bettany, who delivers a dark performance as the unnamed young gangster. There's something about this guy that makes your skin crawl. It reminds me of that first season of Fargo where we get the Malvo character. Initially, he's some kind of muscle or contract killer, but as the show goes on and the character unravels, it's implied he's so much more. A demon perhaps, a devil. And that's the vibe I got with this character here. He's a twisted savage. It's almost like being an underworld figure is an excuse for him to live out his freakish tendencies, as best exemplified in one of the movie's most notable scenes where he slowly undresses before making a kill. You think he's going to take off his jacket not to get any blood on his clothes. Okay, now he's taking off his shoes and socks too. Yeah, DNA and all that. But then he takes it all off, and it becomes apparent that this is less about not getting caught and more of a ritualistic thing. And this is one of the movie's best aspects, the way in which it blindsides you by presenting itself as a gangster film, but sprinkling in horror elements, like these weird, unsettling screams the character does from time to time randomly. It's like that inner demon, whatever is eating away at him, as Thewlis' girlfriend Karen puts it at one point, is revealing itself, struggling to contain itself, about to be unleashed. I really wish they did more with that. And you have to give the movie credit for bluntly portraying its lead as a vicious sociopath with no wit or charm. The way he talks to women is unnecessarily cruel. The way he deals with people he's interrogating is soft, intimate, like a lover, because he simply revels in this role of his. So the movie tackles his rise and has him betray Thewlis, who ends up going to jail, and Gangster 55 takes over the outfit. But then something weird happens. We get a montage of his crimes and successes over the decades, until we get to him transforming into Michael McDowell, reminiscing about his life and anticipating the release of Thewlis from prison. This guy was a psycho. I was ready for a reign of terror, and thus I felt robbed by this montage. And the movie should be kicking itself for speed running through the prime of the gangster's reign. It's like it got bored and wanted to get it over with. But we were only like an hour and 15 minutes in by this point. It's like the movie used up all its energy into telling the delicate and fleshed out take of Gangster 55's rise, but then couldn't be bothered with the rest. And I wouldn't have minded much if maybe we got a scene after this montage where a deal goes bad and Bettany is gunned down in a crime doesn't pay kind of ending. But instead, the movie decides to ditch all of that potential excitement and follow McDowell around as the older gangster. And he was terrible.
The shoes, is it? The handmade fucking shoes? Here! They're yours. Have them. Here! Take them! They're yours. Typing? Oh, you like the typing? Oh, fuck me. It's even got your initials on it. Take it. Have it. Here, it's yours. Have it.
He's over the top and he's completely out of sync with the rest of the movie. He plays the character like some kind of party freak living at large, a boisterous and lively individual, a complete far cry and quite frankly insult to Bettany's disturbing and quiet performance. He clearly never even watched the dailies featuring Bettany's work, made no effort to marry his performance up with the actor, and just showed up to set doing his own thing, even using a different accent.
I was there.
Get your hands off her. Karen! Maxie, please, no. Not the girl. Not the girl, no.
Sound familiar? You crawling around in your own blood. Pathetic.
There's a huge disconnect, and his insertion always felt cynical to me, as if the filmmakers made this tight little film, but the script found its way to McDowell, who expressed interest in being in it, so they rewrote the film to shove him in there because he's a bigger name than anybody else in the movie, still riding off A Clockwork Orange. It's not just that he shows up in the beginning and end, he has a narration throughout that again is so over the top in the way it's delivered and doesn't feel at all like it's 55 thinking back on his life. And it's unnecessary too. Why do I want to hear McDowell tell me what's going on in Bettany's mind as he's doing that scream thing? I'd much rather they remove the narration entirely and just have us follow this freaky guy around. There's a part where the character is walking through an apartment building and McDowell is saying, door, elevator, handle, up, left, things like that.
Open. Out. Corridor. Walk in. Machete. Axe. Gun.
As if my TV had audio description left on, and it's giving the scene a goofy vibe when it should be creating a sense of apprehension.
Axe. Gun. I'm out of the car. Walk in. See a car. Pick it up. MOT.
I don't know if it was a train spotting or lock stock influence or what, but my cynical interpretation of the behind the scene of the events might have some truth to them, as apparently the producers thought Bettany wasn't a big enough name to carry the film, so got McDowell in it to give the picture a bit of star power. The young gangster felt like Michael Corleone of The Godfather Part 2, and the older version felt like Michael in Part 3. That kind of disconnect that people complained about was here too. And by the way, the rest of the cast are aged up for the flash forward scenes, and the aging makeup is really good. It makes it even more mind-boggling then, since everybody else is played by the same actors as they were in the flashbacks, that why wasn't Bettany part of the later storyline, instead getting pushed out for McDowell? That scene at the end between Gangster 55 and Freddie Mays would have been so much more powerful with the original actor. It's not just McDowell, but the character itself. This whole last segment is strange. He's an old, successful man now, seems pretty chill, but then learns Freddie Mays is coming out of prison, and he turns into a mad, loony old man yelling at everyone, including himself. I think to that rant about having someone to love him to Karen, the weird scene where he meets Freddie again after all these years and for some reason wants his old boss, now retired and happy to live a simple life, to kill him. Why has he all of a sudden become self-destructive? The movie's trying to do a thing where he's become the top guy, having replaced the previous top guy, but the old top guy still has that one thing he doesn't have, and it's killing him. But it doesn't work. It feels like it came out of nowhere, and again, it just feels like they wanted a storyline for McDowell to have, and quickly wrote one into the film. I think you remove McDowell's scenes, get rid of the voiceover, and give the film some kind of satisfactory ending, and there's a good little movie here. If they wanted to be ambitious, they could have added an hour and shown us the prime and fall of the protagonist. As it stands though, Gangster No. 1 is a tight little film featuring a terrific lead performance, bogged down by the unseemly insertion of Malcolm McDowell and the future scenes. What do you make of the movie? Let me know in the comments section below. Let me know what film you want me to review next, and thanks for watching.